How do we ensure that Aboriginal peoples with a disability receive services that meet their needs in a culturally appropriate and safe manner? One way of doing so is to build an Aboriginal workforce. As a sector and as individual organizations across Australia, we can make a difference together for Australia's first peoples with a disability. Welcome everyone, I'm Romain Pignataro, Project Lead Aboriginal Employment Pathways here in the Perth office, and I'm here today to talk to you about the NDS Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Employment Guide and Toolkit that was developed last year. But before we begin today, I want to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians and elders of this nation and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational contributions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I wish to acknowledge also the Whadjuk Noongar people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm speaking on today. And as we're all joining from different places across the country, I want to encourage everyone to take a moment to reflect on your own acknowledgement of country. I also want to extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining this session today. So the initial NDS Aboriginal Employment Project, which started in 2018, aimed to develop targeted employment strategies and best practice resources to increase employment opportunities for Aboriginal peoples in the disability sector. There were 4 deliverables as part of this project, and the first one was to update the NDS Aboriginal Employment Guide within an NDIS context. So you may have seen this document before. It was developed in New South Wales in 2013. The second deliverable was to conduct workshops and work with disability service providers in WA regions as well as in Metro, to find out what works and what doesn't work when it comes to Aboriginal employment. The third component of this work was to assist those participating providers with their employment practices. And all of this information was used to inform the update of the guide. And then we shared the resource with the sector. So it is available on NDS's website. You can find it under the resource tab, or alternatively, you can look it up on the search box. So as part of this project, what we have done is not only update the 2013 Aboriginal Employment Guide, but we have developed a whole new document, which now includes a toolkit. So the guide and toolkit really provides a practical, action-oriented, and authentic approach to building organizational capacity and capability to improve Aboriginal employment across the disability sector. So what is included in the guide and toolkit? The guide itself provides a mix of information and was developed across 2 main areas in order to effectively employ Aboriginal employees. And those areas are organizational readiness, which includes the foundations and preparation of the workplace. And the second area, which is employment strategies, which includes more specifically attraction, recruitment, and retention. It also has information around terminology, protocols. You can also find tips and advice throughout the guide. It does have a national focus, but you're obviously able to use the information to make it relevant to the location you're in. In the toolkit that I've just mentioned that we developed as part of this work, there's a number of tools that are ready to use, available, and I'll just name a few. So you can find an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural capability framework, which I think is on page 47. There is an organizational self-assessment and continuous improvement plan, also an Aboriginal employment strategy, checklist and report, a policy template, diversity statement, and also a list of significant events for Aboriginal peoples. So you might want to have a look at that document and look at how you can acknowledge and celebrate some of those significant dates in the workplace. We knew it was very important for the sector to develop tools that were just ready to be used to assist wherever you're at in your Aboriginal employment journey. So how have we developed this resource? Well, to develop this resource, we obviously have worked with a number of disability service providers in regions and Perth Metro. We also engaged with Mandy Gadsden, who is a very experienced Aboriginal workforce development consultant. And we also established an Aboriginal advisory network who we consulted with to ensure that we had cultural input at every stage of our work, which is a very important component. And it's very pleasing to see that to date, we have received extremely positive feedback from a range of stakeholders, including participating disability service organizations, some members of the Aboriginal Advisory Network, and also other sectors. We know that organizations that strive to become an employer of choice for Aboriginal peoples will be more successful in this space, and this can be achieved by becoming a more culturally responsive organization. Importantly, this will also assist organizations in better meeting the cultural needs of Aboriginal peoples with a disability. It is evident that employing Aboriginal peoples leads to improved outcomes that can be realized for Aboriginal peoples who receive support by fellow Aboriginal staff members. There are 4 key learnings that I'd like to share with you today that were very important to me. The first one is that consultation is paramount. You can't expect to do this sort of work without consulting Aboriginal peoples. The second one is that it is critical for organizations to understand their why. And that means really understanding what drives they have for them to embark on this journey. The third one is, and I really like this term, it is a journey. It is a challenging but rewarding journey. It will take time for outcomes, meaningful outcomes to be achieved. Again, it really also depends on where the organization is at, but generally speaking, things take time. And the fourth key learning was in the early stages of this work, we found out that there was a key missing link for most organizations, and that was the importance of having your organization ready. So this is to really ensure that your organization has solid foundations to support effective Aboriginal employment. So we'll dive into this a little bit later on. Now we'll be focusing on 2 of the tools that we developed. And the first one is the Cultural Capability Framework. So you can find on page 47, and basically what this does is it does have the cultural, the continuum, the spectrum where organizations can see themselves from being culturally unaware to being culturally responsive. So that's also across the 2 stages, organizational readiness and employment strategies. There are also examples as to what it means to be, for example, culturally committed or to be culturally unaware. So just to give you just an example, just so you can get a bit of an idea as to what I'm talking about, let's say in regards to service delivery, an organization who potentially is culturally unaware might mean that they have a staff member who is visiting an Aboriginal community without seeking permission or having no understanding around family needs when a death or emergency presents for an Aboriginal staff member. Also, I can mention as an example an organization that might be in the committed stage, could be looking at, leading by example, reflecting equity in the workplace through addressing power imbalances, developing resources that are culturally accessible. One that might be more in the responsive stage might be, having reflective practices, solid supervision and support in place. It can also be an organization that's working with Aboriginal community-controlled organizations. So again, this is just to give you a bit of an example. So it's on page 47 of the document. Now, moving on to the organizational self-assessments. So if you ask me, this is the key component of our work. So you might be wondering, oh, why so? Well, I think this tool is very innovative because it allows participants, organizations, to take a deep look into where you're at in relation to your Aboriginal employment across the areas of organization readiness, which is stage 1, and employment strategies, stage 2. And that by identifying your strengths, areas for improvements, and actions related to Aboriginal employment. It also has been built on the cultural capability framework that I've just mentioned before. So that's the 5 criteria of being culturally unaware to being culturally responsive. So culturally unaware, culturally aware, culturally committed, culturally capable, and culturally responsive. Again, there's no right and wrong. It's just a matter of finding out where you're at on that spectrum against all the elements that are part of the self-assessment. There are 25 elements in total, 13 within the stage 1 and 12 within the stage 2. So how does this work? Well, on the first page of the self-assessment, which is on page 48, you can find the instructions. So you can have before that, the overview of all of the elements that we think are relevant and important as part of Aboriginal employment, and also the cultural spectrum that we've just talked about, and the instructions as to how to actually do this exercise in your organization. So we highly recommend to engage and include employees from different departments. So that might be human resources, service delivery teams, executive team, even the board. Again, it's really up to you who you want to include in this process. But I will also say that if you're already employing Aboriginal peoples, you really want to engage with them in this process, obviously, if they are comfortable in being part of it. And so when you get onto the exercise itself, the idea is against each element, you will be circling where you think you're at, where you'd like to be. So for example, in terms of vision and commitments, which is in a foundation stage, you might be an organization that is at the culturally aware stage. And again, you can see the definition as to what it means to be culturally aware for this specific element. And you might decide that from aware, you'd like to move to culturally committed in 12 months' time. So then what you'll be doing is, obviously, you'll be having robust conversations with your own teams as to where people think the organization is at, which is a very interesting process in itself, because often people have different views, which is very healthy and very good as part of this process. And then what you'll be doing is you'll be looking, okay, well, what actions do we need to undertake for us to reach the committed level? So what you'll do is you will be using the continuous improvement plan that is also provided as part of this tool, where you will be recording this information as to your current status, where you'd like to be, the time frame, but also information such as evidence of practice, what are the gaps that you have identified, what are the actions, but also who is going to be responsible for it. I would really like to suggest today that if you go down this path and you do use this tool, that you link in this work to other strategic documents. So you might want to link it into, say, a strategic plan or a reconciliation action plan if you already have one, so that it really becomes a living document. So that would be my advice. So this is just to give you a brief overview of what we have developed. I'm more than happy to assist you if you have any questions around the guide and toolkit, or even around Aboriginal employment in general. You can contact me. My email is Romain, ROMAIN, .Pignataro, PIGNATARO, @nds.org.au. And I'd like to reiterate today, for the purpose of this presentation, that it is important for us, for this sector, to really be looking at how we can provide culturally appropriate and safe services to Aboriginal peoples. And also the importance of engaging with Aboriginal people as part of this work. And again, I'll finish by saying that it is a great starting point to be looking at the self-assessment, because that will give you a roadmap as to what you need to do and where you're at. So that would be my advice for you. And I really believe that as a sector and as individual organizations, we can really make a difference in this space. So I would really encourage you to have a look at the guide and toolkit. There's lots of information there. And again, if you need any assistance in this space, don't hesitate to contact me. And it is a journey worth taking. So the only question I'm going to be asking you today is, are you ready? Thank you. Bye.